Hey there, Wicked Smart community. It's Prefontaine with another Motivational Monday. On one of the past videos, and you can go look it up, I talked about the gap. I talked about the gap on interviews and radio and podcasts. I talked about the gap when I'm in webinars. And usually with the gap I'm talking about is the gap between you going to a course or a seminar or taking something online and then doing your first deal. So for those of you that are already doing deals, you can disregard that. But that gap, unfortunately, for many of you is enormous. And we have students coming to us, we have students in our associate program doing deals, approaching and past $1 million that came to us originally and said, I spent X. They're stuck in that gap and I have not done a deal yet, which just boggles my mind how you could spend that much, some people 6 figures, and not get to a deal. So we've proven that we're closing that gap here at Smart Real Estate Coach and doing deals with you in the trenches. But because it's close to year end, when you're seeing this, I want to talk about a different gap. It's very similar, and I have made some notes about what I want you to think about as you're going through this exercise, but the specific gap would be between where you are now and where you want to be. So this could be you doing your first deal or you scaling from 12 to say 18, because what you did to get there is totally different than what you're going to do for the next stage. And if you haven't done a deal yet, clearly what you're going to do is different than you've been doing because you haven't done a deal yet. Okay, very important. So when you're in this gap, what are some things I want you to think about? Well, first of all, I want you to trust the process if you're in our system. That's super, super important. Secondly, I want you to welcome curveballs and welcome challenges and welcome problems because it's just going to strengthen you getting the heck out of the gap. Like so many people panic. Like I'll get text messages and emails all the time about what if this happens with a buyer? What if this happens with a seller? Welcome it and then call us or text us or get on the Wicked Smart sit down the third Thursday of the month with us and say, how do I deal with this? There's a pivot and a solution for everything. Don't panic. So welcome it, okay? Secondly, kind of look through right now, if you're doing deals especially, and see when you're in this gap trying to get to the next level, what's working? Great. We'll see if we can capitalize on that. Let's see if it will be the same stuff moving to the next level. And then look at what's not working. And then let's get you some help there, or let's get it off your plate. What I want to talk to you about before we move into the new year, or if you're just seeing this at the beginning of the year, it's okay, is I want to talk to you about the differences between minimum standards, keyword, and having just a goal. It's interesting because as we're at year end, you'll have people instruct you to say, well, do you set a goal really high and then be comfortable with it where it lands, or do you set a minimum and say I'm gonna feel better because I crushed it? I don't know. But I know if you set a minimum standard, there's a different mentality. A minimum standard that you won't go below no matter what. Example, very elementary example. I will not go below a minimum standard of 10 leads in a week. Okay, so you get to Saturday and you got 8, you got to do whatever it takes to go find 2 leads. It might take you an hour, it might take you 10 minutes. It's setting the minimum standard. And then here's an idea for you. You say, well, I could just not do it. Why don't you have an accountability partner? I do, and almost always have had an accountability partner. And you set up a weekly call and you say, here's my minimum standard, I will not fall below. And then they check you on it next week and you check them on theirs. That's a cool way of doing it. Versus, oh, I may or may not hit the goal, I'll just reset that goal. No, set these babies in stone and you'll be committed. So then you know you'll nail that monthly. Actually, you'll nail it weekly, then you'll nail it monthly, you'll nail it quarterly, and you'll have the best year ever just by setting a minimum standard. So set that up for your leads, your appointments. And then I was reading some things just as I was prepping for this, and I was thinking to myself, okay, I just said to you, do the extra calls if you don't have the leads. Go the extra mile because you have to hit your minimum standard. That's going to take sacrifice, don't you think? We just heard from one of our associates last night on one of our calls, and he said, my daughter was standing there and she was a bit sad that I couldn't be with her, and that motivated me to actually hit my minimum standard, and then I was able to go play with her, in a sense. So that took a little bit of a sacrifice. He had to do that. He knew he had to do that, and it hurt, but it actually drove him to go to the next level. While I was going through that, I grabbed a couple quotes I want to read to you because it had to do with the whole discipline, the whole sacrifice. These are both key things right here in this gap. To get out of the gap, we have to address sacrifice, we have to address discipline. This one was by the late Jim Rohn. A simple, small quote said, discipline is the bridge, coincidentally, to this gap between goals and accomplishment. That's it. Discipline, big D word in the middle of all that. And then going back a little bit, blast in the past with basketball, legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar said this. This is about sacrifice. I think the good and the great are only separated by the willingness to sacrifice. And then there was some guy, I don't know if you know him, he's an old British philosopher, but he said, James Allen, he said, he who would accomplish little must sacrifice little. He would achieve much must sacrifice much. He who would attain highly must sacrifice greatly. sacrifice and discipline, guys. Brainstorm that a bit as you get into your new year, and let's help you establish minimum standards so you can break through the gap or close the gap. You're never going to avoid it, and go from the now to where you want to be. And guess what? Next year, you're just going to reset it again, and we're here to help you do that. I appreciate you tuning in to another Motivational Monday, and I encourage you to get your butt on our monthly third Thursday of the month, Wicked Smart Sit Down, with any questions, any brainstorms, or if you just want to hang out and hear how we address people. Usually the family's on there or someone from the family's on there to go ahead and chat with you or whoever shows up. Look forward to seeing you there.